I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic.
Say it with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hello, American patriots, and welcome to a special report on Donald Trump's tax returns. As you all know, the Democrats have been trying to get these returns for many years. And finally, it's in their hands, and they're being released to you, the public. But first, they started leaking out information that CNN picked up on, which I will share with you here shortly. For the past 8+ years, the Democrat Party has been trying to get their dirty hands on Donald Trump's tax returns, even going so far to say that he is a cheat. He cheated on his taxes. They know he lied about his taxes, and he is a dishonest, unethical human being for doing so. They promised the American people that one day they will get a court order forcing the release of his taxes. And when that day comes, they will prove to all of us that Donald J. Trump lied and is a tax cheat. Well, that day has come. They have Donald Trump's tax returns that they've been seeking. And guess what? Once again, Democrats have no integrity and just like to go around making up shit about their political enemies. What I'm about to share with you is directly from CNN being reported right now. You can go to their website and you can see it in its entirety. It will take time for lawmakers and the public to digest the trove of documents related to former President Donald Trump's tax returns that were released on Tuesday night by the House Ways and Means Committee. Trump repeatedly defied convention and refused to release his tax returns both as a presidential candidate and as a sitting president. And if you don't know, there is absolutely nothing in the Constitution or in American law that says you have to release your tax returns to run for president or to be a president. The committee, which is responsible for the IRS oversight and writing tax policy, had long sought and finally obtained just a few weeks ago Trump's tax returns from 2015 through 2020, which is what they were looking for, which is what Adam Schiff said is going to be a bombshell. Its stated aim was to review how the IRS enforces the federal tax laws against and ensure compliance by a president. Here are some of the top internal takeaways from the committee's report, which includes both its analysis of the IRS Presidential Audit Program and analysis of Trump's returns by the nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation. The Ways and Means Committee asserted the IRS Presidential Audit Program was dormant during the Trump term. The report found that during Trump's time in office, the IRS opened only one mandatory audit for his 2016 tax return, and that didn't take place until the fall of 2019, after Chairman Neal first sent a letter asking the IRS for Trump's returns and tax information. It also noted that the agency had opened an earlier tax audit that year for 2015, but it was not mandatory that they see that one. But on that alone, they went overboard to try and say, the Democrats, to try and say that Trump is hiding something. He's hiding his wealth. He's hiding his donations. He's cheating on his taxes. They made that very clear in many, many interviews. The 2017 tax return, meanwhile, was marked as evaluated and picked up for examination if necessary. It remains unclear why the IRS wasn't more active in auditing Trump's returns while president. Well, maybe that's because they didn't find anything wrong. They don't just go looking for shit. They have to have some kind of evidence. And there wasn't any. Despite knowledge of an ongoing congressional investigation and the manual no report was given to the mandatory audit program by the prior administration, the report asserts. Senator Ron Wyden, who chairs the Tax Writing Committee in the Senate, said Wednesday the IRS was asleep at the wheel and the presidential audit program is broken. There is no justification for the failure to conduct the required presidential audits until congressional inquiry was made. I have additional questions about the extent to which resource issues or fear of political retaliation from the White House contributed to the lapse here. So you see what they're doing? They got nothing they can report on dirt with Trump. So now it's the IRS's fault for not giving them the dirt they were hoping to find when these taxes got released. Now they found out that, Trump wasn't lying when he said, I can't release them because they're under audit. They were indeed under audit. Many Democrats, including those in the committee, as well as tax policy experts, suggested that a lack of resources, including manpower, to handle highly complex audits like those of Trump may also be a factor. It's easy to find the IRS deficiencies. They've starved for resources. Rich guys can take advantage of the tax law because the IRS doesn't have the resources to go after them, said Stephen M. Rostel, Senior Fellow of the Urban Brooks Tax Policy Center at the Urban Institute. CNN reached out to the IRS, which did not have an immediate comment. After years of carrying forward big losses to greatly reduce, if not zero out, his federal income tax liability, Trump reported a considerable tax bill in the middle of 2 years of his presidency, all which is legal. According to the tables in the JCT report, Trump paid a combined $1.1 million in federal income taxes in 2018 and 2019. A stark contrast to the $750 he paid in 2017 and zero in 2020. All totally legal. His taxable income in 2018 near $23 million, which included a $22 million capital gain. The next year, he reported close to $3 million in taxable income with a capital gain of $9 million. All totally legal. However, in 2020, Trump reported losses of over $16 million, large enough to reduce his federal income tax bill that year to a zero. All totally legal. For many years, prior to his running for president, a New York Times investigation showed that Trump had claimed huge net operating losses that he was allowed to carry forward to apply to future tax years, which greatly reduced or simply wiped out his annual income tax liability. All totally legal. It's a 2,000-pound gorilla. He still uses the net operating losses to reduce his liability, Rosenthal said. For example, the JCT noted that Trump carried forward $105 million in losses of his 2015 return, $73 million in 2016, $45 million in 2017, $23 million in 2018. All totally legal. The JCT report raises questions about the accuracy of some huge charitable donations Trump claimed on several of his tax returns. Deductions can limit the amount of income tax that someone owes. In 2015, Trump claimed a $21.1 million deduction for donating 150 acres of his 212-acre property called Seven Springs in North Castle, New York. The donation, which made to a land and trust, was a focus of the Manhattan District Attorney's criminal investigation of the Trump Organization finances. The IRS allowed an income tax deduction from owners who give up rights to their land for the purpose of conservation. But the IRS has raised questions whether the value of Trump's land donation was inflated. The JCT report notes that the IRS agent assigned to audit Trump's tax suggests disallowing the entire $21.1 million deduction because Trump did not get a qualified appraisal for the land. The agent alternatively suggested reducing the value of the deduction by more than half and said the appraiser may be subject to a fine for potentially misstating the value of the land, if that was to happen, and if they actually did that. But if there was no appraisal done, shame on the IRS for not making sure that took place. Again, all totally legal. Since Trump did not have any taxable income in 2015, the deduction was limited, but it can be carried forward and deducted in future years. All totally legal. The IRS audit of the Seven Springs donation is ongoing. Oh, of course. A site visit occurred in January, and agents met with appraisals as recent as November, according to the JCT report. The report also raised questions about cash donations that Trump claimed as charitable donations. In 2016 and 2017, Trump claimed nearly $1.2 million and $1.9 million, respectively, in charitable contributions, the bulk of which were made in cash. Trump, again, had no taxable income in either year, but he was able to carry forward the deductions of future years, future limiting the amount of federal income tax he had to pay. The JCT said the large cash contributions merited an overview. Of course, they're going to say that because they've got nothing else to go on, because he's done nothing illegal to this point, right? Trump had taxable income in 2018 and 2019 and reported cash donations of just over $500,000 each year. This means that he was able to claim a charitable contribution deduction for those years. JCT suggested Trump should be asked to show his large cash donations. The JCT reported authors wrote that while it identified a number of items worth an examination, they expressed no opinion whether examination of those items would have resulted in any proposed tax increases. Not what the Democrats want to hear. Shortly after the New York Times published a blockbuster story on September 27, 2020, that detailed Trump's tax returns, the IRS met internally to discuss how to manage a review of the then president's taxes. During the meeting, mention was made of the history of difficult negotiations between IRS staff and Trump lawyers, according to the JCT report. IRS regulators also laid out a strategy at meeting with the evaluating Trump finances, seeking criteria to make the process manageable given the large amount of pass-through entities. Trump's trust has ownership of various pass-through entities, the income and deduction for which flow to Trump's federal income tax returns. In March 2021, the IRS contacted Trump's representative and said that an audit had begun of his 2017 and 2018 tax returns. Around this time, Trump's team called the IRS to discuss the size of the teams evaluating the tax return. 3 agents were assigned, compared to a typical single agent for everybody else. The IRS team manager explained to Trump's representative the agency had deemed the 2017 tax return as high risk, requiring additional team members to examine more than 400 flowing through entities. The examination would represent most of all of the 3 IRS agents' caseloads. Trump's team also expressed concern about the scope of the review, which looked back as far as 2014 because of the deductions that Trump claimed in that year and carried over and reduced his tax burden in the earlier years. The Ways and Means Committee said it intends to release the Trump tax returns at the issue of its report so that you may read what they're already leaking out and telling the public about, which is that they found absolutely nothing because it's totally legal what he did. The release could come in a matter of days. First, sensitive personal information such as Social Security numbers and account numbers must be redacted. Meanwhile, proposed legislation that would codify the mandatory audit program to require the IRS to conduct mandatory audits while a president is in office and publicly disclose related returns and return information. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said the House will move swiftly to advance that bill. Swiftness will be required if the bill is to pass and become law. The Democrats hand over control of the House to the Republicans on January 3rd. So, what's the bottom line and the takeaway from this bombshell that once we get our hands on it, the Democrats said will prove to the American people once and for all that Trump cheated on his taxes? Well, bottom line is everything the Democrats said about Trump was 100% guilty of him. He's guilty. He's guilty. He's guilty. Has come back to bite them in the ass. There was no Russia collusion. There was no racism, bigotry proven. There was no quid pro quo and no bombshell with his tax returns. The Democrat House impeached him twice and the Senate tossed it out because the evidence to prove their accusations were not there. They made shit up. The Mueller report proved there was no Russia collusion. The Department of Justice proved there was no quid pro quo. And now the release of Trump's tax returns proves once again the Democrats are nothing but sore losers from 2016, pathetic minions, and lower than snail slime, un-American, whiny crybabies that need to be placed in a timeout and have their butts spanked. And that's actually what's about to happen come January 3rd when the Republicans take over the House. If that wasn't enough, I will close by adding one other little thing that was in Trump's favor today. Remember Cassie Hutchinson? I reported on her. She was the one that was in Trump's inner circle and came in front of the January 6th committee and said that Trump reached over and tried to grab the steering wheel away from the Secret Service drivers, although he was in the back of the fucking car and there was no way for him to have done that, to steer it towards the Capitol building on January 6th. Remember her bombshell testimony? Cassie Hutchinson said she lied in her original deposition to the House Capitol Committee investigating the January 6th incident. And that is out right now. You can read it on Fox News. She said she initially told the panel she hasn't heard of Trump's lunging at the Secret Service, but soon after her deposition, she said she told her attorney, I lied. Cassie Hutchinson, a former aide to Donald Trump administration and a key witness in a House Select Committee hearing on the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack, said she initially led the panel in a deposition about whether she'd heard that President Trump lunged at a Secret Service agent in the presidential SUV on the day of the riot. In her newly released depositions, Hutchinson said she was pushed by her attorney, Stephen Passanen, to mislead it on how much information she knew. The committee does not know what you can and can't recall, so they won't be able to say much, as we could care less, and they won't know what you do or do not clearly remember. Hutchinson said she followed the advice of her counsel. When asked about a moment on January 6th, when the president is said to have lunged at a member of the Secret Service in a presidential SUV for not taking him to the Capitol alongside protesters, she said she told the panel she had never heard anything about that. After the deposition,
She told the committee in a separate deposition that she broke down in front of her attorney out of fear that she had just lied to the committee. She said, "I fucked up. I just lied. I lied. In a later deposition, Hutchinson told the committee she continued to be riddled with guilt after not being entirely truthful to the committee in her first deposition. "Stephen, I feel really guilty and bad about not answering some questions today," she said she told her counsel. Hutchinson also apologized for his missteps in the committee. "I know my history with the committee, and I'm sorry that it took so long to get to this place," she told Republican Liz Cheney, who's on the committee. She vice chairs the committee. "I do accept responsibility for it. I'm not pinning blame on anybody else but myself." And of course, her attorney denied any wrongdoing in a statement, saying, "As with all my clients during my 30 years of practice, I represented Mrs. Hutchinson honorably, ethically, and fully consent with her sole interests as she communicated them to me," he said. "I believe Ms. Hutchinson was being truthful and cooperated with the committee throughout the several interviews, sessions in which I represented her." So, what is this called? Drum roll. It's called perjury. Lying under oath. So, which statement is she perjuring herself? That's what I want to know as an American taxpayer. Is it the first one or the second one? The first time she said Trump didn't do this. Wait, now she's saying that he did do this. So one of those two times, something's not right, correct? Regardless, you lied under oath. You committed perjury. If the House committee had any integrity, you would be charged. But you will not be charged because they have no integrity. Two separate times, both under oath, you said two complete and different things. So your credibility is going to shit in a handbasket. It doesn't exist anymore, which I've been saying all along and reported many times that some of the things she was saying weren't true because those that she claimed she got it from came out and said, "We never said that." She's a pathological liar. And now we know the truth. She is a liar. And she perjured herself in front of the January 6th committee. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders and their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families, and our country. May God bless the United States of America. If I don't see you between now and Christmas, have a Merry Christmas, everyone. Take care, and God bless.